It's 10 o'clock here in Copenhagen, sunny Copenhagen, but a little bit cold. I hope you're all doing really well and welcome to this Preely event. I'm really, really honored to have been invited to facilitate this event for Preely. I know the guys that started Preely from way back before it was even called Preely, and they were actually the sponsors, the first sponsors of the podcast that I have. And in case you don't know what Preely is, Preely is a self-service platform that is streamlining user engagement and feedback through easy recruitment and user panel management. So you can efficiently recruit users to build your user panel. And once users are part of your panel, you can select target groups where you can share tests, surveys, and invitations, all to stay connected and communicate, all for getting valuable insights and enhancing product decision making. So if you are interested in that, feel free to sign up. Also, if you want a demo, you can reach out to the Preely team. But when they asked me if I wanted to do this this little series of webinars here in the spring months, I was like, yes. And I was given completely free hands who I wanted to invite. And Riziki was actually one of the first people I thought of because I've been working in the same office with Riziki for it's actually over a few years, and he's just a very, very talented designer, digital designer that really knows what's happening on the technical side. I think you're one of the people that are the most tech nerdy in the positive sense of the words. And I really wanted to hear how you were working with AI, because I know that you at Qualific are very, very interested and work really closely with that. You were the first one who did photo generation when it was really, really bad.
Yeah.
It's
It was
changed
it
a
was not the
lot.
same as today.
No. But Riziki, will you present yourself to the audience and take over the screen?
Yeah, let me just pull my screen up here.
And for you guys listening in, feel free to write in the Q&A section if you have any questions. We'll take them at the end and not during the talk, so we don't interrupt the flow of Riziki's presentation. But Riziki, take it away.
I'm just gonna skip back to the beginning.
It's a good idea.
Yes. Yeah, so the first point in my agenda is also telling a bit about myself, so I'll just start there. And yeah, so I work as a digital designer in Qualific, and I also have a few words about Qualific. But yeah, my background is in design and innovation from the Technical University, and that's not the traditional way people get into specifically to UX, UI, and digital design, but you get this foundation of user involvement and the importance of yeah, making sure that you make things that work for the users, which of course is super important in the digital world as well. And I joined Qualific around 5 years ago, and have worked on a very broad range of design disciplines. So both UX and UI, which is a lot of the things I did in the beginning when I started, and then been adding on more things along the way with design, more graphic design and animation, and trying a bit of 3D and motion design. And these last 3 years also doing a lot of Webflow, where we, which is what we use to build websites when we do that for our clients. And yeah, also I've been participating in Webflow. They have this annual Speed Build Challenge where you compete to build a website or part of a website in 10 minutes. And I got the third place last year. So that was also a great experience. And yeah, Qualific, we are a digital agency in many ways. So we have developers and designers and yeah, a lot of different clients where we try to just enable them to do all of these digital things that they want to do. And so that's both helping them out with their websites and communication, but also building custom platforms and apps and all that. Yeah, but that was my introduction. So the next part is just getting a bit into how I've worked with AI as a designer. And now I skipped it quickly ahead of the agenda, but I have 3 main points that I want to talk about. So, and I have a lot of examples from my specific projects along the way. But the first thing I want to talk about is using AI tools in the design process to make it more efficient or to bring more ideas, input. And yeah, the second part is using AI for professional development, so for learning purposes, and how I've worked with it in that context. And there it's mainly been ChatGPT as the tool. And then in the end, I have a few just considerations about ethics and responsible use. And there are some things to keep in mind that's still evolving. And then I also have a little demo that we can do. Yeah. But the first thing I want to talk about in how I use AI in the design process is Midjourney. So for those of you who don't know Midjourney, it is one of the biggest image generating tools, and also one of the first ones that really got good enough to get some public attention. And now, of course, ChatGPT can also generate images, and there are some other players as well. And so Midjourney is a bit special because the way you generate images is that you get invited into Discord, which is like a chat app, and then you write a message to the chat, and it will reply with what you asked for. Then you can choose which image you like to get it upscaled or to make different variations of this. And it can do some very high quality images right now. And one thing that I've used it for specifically for projects is to replace placeholder photos. So instead of having these gray photo icons that illustrate that here should go some kind of photo, and maybe also with a description that says we want a photo here of a truck that loads some cars. Then we can generate photos with Midjourney that we can use in these places that just allows us to have a design that's a bit more focused and a bit more specific in doing what we wanted to do. So here it's still it's not in the final part of the design, but it is when we are adding some more detail, giving it some more context, and which is also especially important when we're going out to test with users, because it will be easier for a user to understand what we're talking about if they see the image instead of just a gray box that says image goes here. So that is one way that we've worked with it. So these are not real Teslas. It's just a car transport truck carrying 7 Tesla Model 3 cars. Well, that was the prompt, at least. I see there's 8. They're still not that good at counting. Another thing, the way that we've used Midjourney to generate images is visual input for mood boards. So this is mostly when we are in the branding phase or the early phase of the projects. Then we can generate some different assets, and it can just be some input that you can use in the creative process to figure out which direction that you want to go in. So and it could be more crazy ideas as well. These are some actual examples from a client brief. And so just a good way to generate some different visual directions and to play around with things without having to spend too much time in making assets or finding things that fit right into the vibe that we're going for. And the text below these images, actually, that's the exact prompt that was used to generate these images, just for context. So this is the words that we gave the Midjourney, and this is the image that came out. And another way I used it, and in a recent project is to just add some extra flair to our personas. So in this project, we had talked to some users and identified these main user types. It was about talking with car dealers and this different people in that business. So of course, we could just generate some some photos of the personas, so they're reflecting the user that was behind. And of course, it's not something that's super important, but it still makes it a bit more tangible to talk about when you have these personas and you talk about who are the people who will be using your app in the end. So this was actually like I think it was a fun example, and I did a bit of back and forth with getting the prompt right to make it look like a person who was a car dealer. And can see here in the prompt I also added some a camera model just because that helps the AI to generate a photo that looks like it was taken with that camera. So you can kind of choose the style of your photos in that way. And so that was Midjourney. And now I'm moving on to the next tool I want to talk a bit about in the design process, and that's a tool called Relume. And that is Relume is it's more than a tool. It's a company that is making one of the things they're most known for is a component library for Webflow, which is just like they have thousands of components that you can use to build out your website. And they've recently, in the last few months, released this AI site builder tool that allows you to describe a company in a sentence or two, and then it will give you a sitemap and UX wireframe, and soon it will also be able to do a style guide. And I'm gonna this is one of the ones that when I presented it to some students last year, it was mind blowing, and they were thinking, okay, we just spent 2 weeks making wireframes, and now you could do it this fast. And I'll show a bit, a specific example of how it works in the end, and also talk a bit about how we're using it, because of course it can't do all of the work for us. But it is a really, really cool tool. And here is just one example of how we've used it on a project recently. So in this project is for an American SaaS company where we did our usual process actually in getting to a sitemap, which here we make in Miro, just an online whiteboard, and defined, okay, these are the pages and the structure that we want to have. And then when we had that, we took a description of the company, just text from their own website, and we also added just listing these are the pages that we want, because we had already defined that at this point. And of course, I think there was added some other pages and made some changes along the way, because that's part of the design process. But the output that Relume gave us from that is a sitemap here, which of course is the same as we'd already created, but it also adds suggests sections to add on each page. So you can see a bit here that it has, of course, a navigation bar at the top. That's a component that's used on multiple different pages. Also creates a header section and a feature section and competitor comparison section. So is suggesting some of these sections that can go on the page, and also writes a short description for what does this section talk about. So that was a very fast way to get some more meat onto your sitemap and to get some more details on what you want to say. And after that, so for each of these pages in the sitemap in Relume, you can then generate a wireframe from that. Because of course, Relume, as I mentioned, is one of their the things they're most known for is their component library. So of course, when they ask or get their AI to generate these sections, they correspond to components from their component library. So they have these different layouts that it will then insert and show you in a specific wireframe. And it will also generate some copy for each of the sections. So you get this extra level of detail and suggestions. And the copy is of course not perfect, and it will probably repeat itself a lot because all we gave it was 5 sentences about what we do. So it's gonna extrapolate from that. But I well, how I liked it because it gave us a bit more specific things to work with when trying to carve out the story that we want to tell on the page. So it just gives some more context than having the same wireframe but with lorem ipsum in every place, and then just a name for each section. So and it's yeah, a pretty good level of fidelity for this part of the process, where we want to focus more on the actual words that we want to put, and the order of information on each page, without thinking about, okay, the buttons should be a bit bigger here, or the image should go on the other side, or something like that. So it allows us to focus a bit on the things that are important here in the beginning, and making sure we have the right story on each page. So this is an example of one of the sections that was suggested, where it talks about our founders and has this grid of people, so the team section. And when you have that selected out here, you can see what are your options. You can turn it into a global section, and you can see you can change the description of the section if you want to change the text on it, and then it can generate some new copy. But you can also replace the component. So down here at the bottom, so that just means that you have some flexibility in adapting it in to how you want your page to be. So you still have a few things to work with, and of course it will suggest components from the Relume component library, and they have a lot of different components. But for some sections, of course, you may want to do something that's different, and something that's not just taken out of a component library. And I think using something like Relume for the wireframe also allows us to work consciously with that, so we can consider, is this founder section an important place for us to make something unique and something that breaks the traditions, or to make something new that you haven't seen anywhere else. Maybe it is, and then we can say this one will just keep like this in Relume, and then we'll do our own custom design in Figma, because we have some great ideas of how we want to do this section. But it could also be that we say this section is fine. It just needs to communicate who is the founders of the team. We can make it ours by having some cool photos and some unique photo style. And because we managed to do this section that efficiently, that gives us more time to make the hero section on the front page super custom, adding some nice animations on that. So of course, if we just go back here, if we want to add some custom things that are not part of the Relume component library, that still makes a lot of sense to do that, and just to make sure that we still get some unique projects out here, and the result is unique in the end. And there were also these two buttons on a section and also on a page in Reloom, and the one to the left allows you to copy the wireframe and insert it into Webflow directly. So there you skip also the building part step in going to Webflow, and then you, of course, when you have it in Webflow, you can change the styling to make sure it looks how you want it to, and you can reorder and change the content and all that. And the other button allows you to copy it into Figma, and that also makes it possible for you to make some changes and to add your design to it, because it is still a wireframe. So you may not want everything to be black and white and gray. So that's also an option you can do, and changing the fonts, of course.
I think adding colors and stuff like that's a great idea.
Definitely. Otherwise, the internet would be a very
Very
boring
dull
place.
place to be.
Okay. And yeah, the last tool, of course, most of you know, ChatGPT, the chatbot that can do almost anything. And yeah, so just a few specific examples of how yeah, I've used it in the design process. I have some more examples, of course, in the learning part, which is probably where I've used it the most. But here's one where I asked it to make an interview guide for user interviews about an online market for swapping used books. The main purpose of the test is to validate that there's a need for the concept and to gain input on user friendliness of our prototype. And then it gave me just a list of how it would structure the user interview. So we start with an introduction, and then we want some background information about their reading habits, and if they've when they purchase books, where they do it, and some of these things, and their previous experience with book swapping, and so on. And of course, the questions that it asks are not always perfect, and but it gives you a good starting place. So now you have an outline of a user test, and you get a good structure with an introduction in the beginning, and then some background questions before you dive into the real meat of the user interview. So it's a quick way to get started, and you can, of course, I would always make sure that the questions make sense and the order makes sense, and yeah um, here on the other side, I also just asked it to do a simplified version and put it up in a table, so you can get an idea of how much time you should spend on each part. And of course, it's maybe not perfect for your specific needs, but then you can tweak it and adjust it, so you get a good idea of how long you want to spend. So maybe for the part, this is an example I just made up, by the way, but maybe we want to focus a bit more on validating the concept, so we can say, let's double that and add some more questions. That's something you could do manually, or you could ask ChatGPT to do it, and kind of own in on what would a good interview guide be for where you are in the process right now. So I think that was a nice way to just quickly get the ball rolling, and then it's always easier when you're started and you have something to look at, so you don't have this blank canvas. Yeah. And another example was just yeah um, for getting checklists and bullets for processes and that you're doing. So of course, this one was very broad, just testing for a website, but still it gives you a quite thorough list of different parts that you can test. And with these this way of using ChatGPT, of course, it's always important to to give context, and you can either do that in your initial prompt. So could be saying, we want to this. What kind of testing do you want to do? Is it performance testing or is it a usability testing? And then you will get more specific answers as well. And you can also just do it in this back and forth, because of course that's one of the main benefits of ChatGPT being a chat, that it allows you to elaborate and continue the thread. So you'll get further specific to what you need. Yeah, so that was the last example in the AI in the design process. Now we have a few specific examples of how I used it for learning purposes. So yeah, as I mentioned, the tool here is mainly ChatGPT, and so I work as a digital designer, and the yeah, the main learning thing that I've used ChatGPT for, there are a few different things, but one of the main ones is learning JavaScript, which is something that have allowed me to, just to add additional functionality and make some funny interactions. These are some from I've just played around with on my own website, but yeah, also adding logic and other things to websites that we do. And it just has been very meaningful for me in a way to add more, make some the result cooler in the end, and make it do more. So that will be the main angle on this part, but of course you can use some of the same principles for learning whatever it is that you want to learn in the design process. And so this first thing, like way of using it, is just to answer specific questions. So here, if you ask it what are design tokens in the context of design systems, you get a response like this. But of course, this is something that we could also just Google, and we could get a similar level of response in a similar amount of time. And for both of these, it applies that if you're not happy with the response you get immediately, then you have to do something more to get a better response. So if you're Googling, then but you want to know more, of course you could go and click the link and read the full article. And for ChatGPT, that would be then to ask these follow-up questions, both so you can add more context. Maybe you are interested in something specific on this topic, or maybe you just want to get some more details and examples of how to apply it in your real life. So both of these are find ways to learn new things. It's just a bit different experience, and they also each have their own place, of course, I would say. The main benefit of Googling here in this case being that if you find a great source, it will likely have like a lot of details and structure in the content that you're reading. And for when using ChatGPT, you will be responsible of creating that content context, and also there's a bit more work of you to figure out if you've learned all of the important things that are to learn about the topic. So when you go to an article about something, of course they will most likely outline, okay, these are the things that we'll talk about. But for ChatGPT, you have to figure out what are the important things to know about this topic that I don't know. And one way, of course, of getting closer to that is asking ChatGPT, okay, list the 5 most important things about this, or areas about this. And then explain. That's always a nice way. So for me, it's been explaining code and different functions and how this works. And usually when you do that, you get a pretty nice breakdown where it just runs you through every single part of the code. Um, and that has just been a nice way to always figure out, okay, how is this actually working? Because when I use ChatGPT to write some code, I always want to know what it's actually doing. And writing code with ChatGPT and asking it what it's doing for a long time has then been the feedback loop that has taught me how to write the code. So now, because I've been doing that for some time, I'll also see when I ask it to make some code for me, and I'll be able to see, hey, that was not exactly what I meant. So I can explain to it, this is actually what I meant instead, and it will write the code. So it's just been a nice way to very quickly get to a point where I can have a good idea of what is possible to do and how it should be done, and then instruct the AI to do it for me. And and you can also get some deeper context of why would something like Google Tag Manager use no script, which is um, something in the HTML you can do. And so those are some of the like broader questions that you can also add to your explanation. So what would the benefits being of doing it this way versus the other way? So you can get the pros and the cons of different ways of doing the same thing. And expert review, as I called it here, is also something that's been good. So maybe I've written some code in this context still of me making code, and I want to make sure that it's good. So you can just ask it to review the code and give you some pointers on how it can be improved, and it will read through it and give you some actionable bullet points. And maybe some of it you don't, it's not important to you because you have a different focus, or that's also something you can include in the prompt. Of course, you can say it's important that you focus on how it can be very performant or easy to understand what is going on in the code. So it may not be that you want to do all of the things that it recommends, but you can say, this number 3, I want to do that. And then you can also ask ChatGPT to implement those improvements to your code. So these are just some of the main points I have here with when using ChatGPT for this. So it's always important to provide context and examples whenever possible, because that just helps make the output better. And the response can only be as good as the prompt. So if you ask it a vague question, you'll most likely get a vague reply. So it's just important to be very specific in what you're asking for. And then I just have a few slides about some considerations when using these generative AI tools. And the first one I put is hallucinations, and I can't remember which version of ChatGPT I did these with, but it sometimes makes things up, and I think these two are my most funny examples. So I was about to drive in the US, and I haven't done that before. So I asked ChatGPT, what are the speed limits in the US? And are there any other things I need to know as a Danish driver in the US? So it mentioned some of these different speed limits. And it also said, as a driver in the US, here are some additional things to keep in mind. Drive on the right. In the US, you drive on the right hand of the road. This is opposite to Denmark, where you drive on the left. I'm not sure about that one. And we also had this other example of make a list of the top things to do or eat for a day trip to Malmö. So it listed some things. You can explore Gamlestaden, and you can also walk across the Øresund Bridge. If you have time, consider taking a trip across the Øresund Bridge, which connects Malmö to Copenhagen. Enjoy the stunning views as you cross the bridge. I'm also not quite sure about that one. So in both examples, I could just ask ChatGPT, can I walk across the Øresund Bridge? No, sorry. Actually, you can't for safety reasons. Okay, yeah. And for the other example, I asked ChatGPT to fact check itself, and it was like, okay, it looks generally accurate, but drive on the right is incorrect, or the statement in that bullet. So yeah, of course, we drive on the right. So it was just yeah, some very funny examples of how it will sometimes make things up, and it's yeah, just always important to be critical, especially when you're dealing with facts, because it's not a search engine. It's generating all of the things that you're seeing on the spot, and you can get a long way by just asking ChatGPT itself to fact check itself. Of course, maybe yeah, if you're asking about a niche topic, it will not be able to do a proper fact check of itself. But yeah, of course, most of the things it said was correct, and this turning right on red is something I hadn't heard about. But that's a thing. You can just turn right on a red light in the US in most areas. Yeah, but it's always still great for inspiration. So yeah, and again, more context gives better answers. So if you want a list of things to do or eat on a day trip to Malmö, just give it a bit of information about you, and then it will make an answer that's better for you. Yeah, but hallucinations, keep that in mind. And there are also some considerations about power usage. It's something that hasn't been talked that much about, but that has been mentioned a few times. And there's not a lot of official numbers, but if I did a bit of searching and also asked ChatGPT itself to give an assessment, and here I just compared it to a Google search where it seemed like it was using around 3 to 15 times, like one prompt was using the same as around 3 to 15 Google searches. And of course, that's not really a fair comparison because, yeah, if it provides a better answer than a Google search, or it can do some things that a Google search cannot do on its own, and you would visit maybe more websites, and yeah, so you can't really compare it directly, and this power usage is also, of course, not in a vacuum. So if it allows you to do a task that would normally take you an hour, but now you can do it in half an hour, then you also save some time in using the computer for less time. So it's yeah, it's a bit early to say something specific on it, but it's something that's nice to keep in mind, and yeah, and yeah, consider when using these generative AI tools. And yeah, for art and image generation, I'm not gonna spend too much time on diving into that because it's a topic that we could spend a lot of time talking about. But there have been some feedback or like backlash from the art community and the artists about whether this training data for these models have been using their copyrighted original works, and there are some websites where you can like create your own model and upload it and share it with people that have used specific artists' artwork. So you could kind of get an AI that makes art in the style of a specific person, which also seems a bit unethical in a way. Yeah, so there are just some things to consider and yeah, it also depends from my perspective on what you want to use these images you're generating with for. Yeah, that was all of the slides. So now the next part I wanted to do is just a quick demo of the Relume tool.
Awesome. I think everyone is kind of it sounds really cool, but I think whenever you hear about new tools, you're always like, but how complicated is it to get started? So it's really nice that you're doing a little demo here for us.
Nice. Oh, can still see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So here I just opened up a blank page in Reloom, or a new project. And in the beginning, there's nothing in here. Out here to the right, it asks us for the sitemap prompt. And here I actually just wanted to try something. So I copied the description of Really from LinkedIn, and then we can see what Redoom will generate for us. So now I just copied this text, and it mentions some of the things that Really is doing. And we can say generate sitemap. And now it was listed 5 to 10 pages. Oh, and of course with live demos, we have an error. So I'll just check my connection and refresh here. Let's try that again. I'm just gonna make a new project. Okay. 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 Yeah. So we got the pages. I don't know why it was.
It's always typical when you're live, right? When it
Yeah.
has to mess up.
I don't know if the prompt is the description is too long for. Okay. Now it's going. Okay.
Perfect.
So yeah, what we see now is that it generated the sitemap. I said 5 to 10 pages, so I guess that's why it gave us these 5. And now it's adding sections on the homepage and writing descriptions for each. So we can see we have a nav bar at the top. Makes sense. We have a header hero section. It says introduction to the service with a strong value proposition, call to actions to recruit users or get feedback. We also have a feature section, explanation of smart user recruitment for building a user panel. Another feature section, a call to action section, testimonial, logo list, and newsletter. Okay, so that's what we got so far. Then if we want to add some more, we can click the plus and go over here and manually say, I also want a footer section. And I can just write include various links to the pages. And yeah, it also generated an about us page, a user panel page, a feedback module page, and a contact page. And if we want to also have an idea of what goes on this page, we can click the user panel page. And over here, we have a page prompt. We can say, explain how you can create a user panel. Yeah. So that prompt is just guiding it a bit in what it should do on this page. So we have a header section, we have a how it works section, feature list section, feature, call to action, FAQ section, a testimonial section, call to action, and a footer. And if we want to then see, okay, how would this user panel page look in the wireframe, we can right click this and go to find page in wireframe. And then it will just add all of the sections for from the sitemap, and also add some content for suggestions for this. So, and of course, the copy, as I mentioned, is not perfect, but often it helps you get the ball rolling. So, of course, this is a bit weird that it starts with step 1. set up your user panel up here, and step 2, share links and recruit, conduct tests. Of course, we didn't tell it exactly how the process is, but it gives you, something to work with. Smart recruitment, segmenting users with precision. Create your own user panel today. That's the call to action. Have an FAQ. How do I create a user panel? Testimonials. It even comes up with fake testimonials for you.
Is it free to use, or do you have to have a profile on Loom to use this, or?
You can try it out for free. So that's available. Then, there are just some limitations in how you can export it and how many projects you can have.
That makes sense. Cool.
Yeah. And for instance, this, you can see that's the final call to action section. It's a final encouragement for visitors. Let me just zoom in a bit. To sign up, contact the company for more information on creating the user panel. And we also have a few different style options we can choose. So that's just changing which component that we're using in this place. So we could also do a completely different call to action section. Maybe you want a centered layout like this. Or we want a form if it's like sign up call to action. And you can reorder these if you want to as well. Yep. And down here we have these buttons that will copy it either to Webflow or to Figma. And I can just see here, if I click the entire page, I would copy the page. And then here I actually just made an empty Webflow project. And if I'm go over here and paste it, let's see. Let's try that again. Yes, okay. So then we actually get those sections that we just saw in Reloom directly into Figma. No, into Webflow actually. Here we skipped Figma, which you probably normally wouldn't do. You would at least always build some add some colors in Figma. Yeah.
Morten has a question. Is
Hmm?
Loom limited to websites, or could you configure the platform as well?
So Reloom is it's not limited to websites, but it's mainly built for websites. So a lot of the components you see in here are makes sense on a website, but they have some components out here as well for platforms. Let's see, or maybe they're actually not in here. Oh yeah, they have these application shell components. So you have some things you can work with here as well, actually. And also a few components for web shops.
Can you like change it to like tablet or mobile?
Okay. So they all of the components in Reloom have also a mobile version of it, and so they are responsive in when it's
Oh, it's down the corner there.
yeah, exactly.
You did it so fast. Bad side.
Yeah, and we can also see in the Webflow when we got that it generated for us. It has some responsiveness to it.
Cool. Do you have more that you would like to demo? Because we're getting some really interesting questions in the chat here.
No, I think let's just look at the questions.
Perfect. So these the three questions that came in is very much in thread. So we'll start with Sasha's questions. How do clients react to the use of AI in the design process? Do you find yourself having to educate clients on the value and reliability of AI-generated designs? And then she commented that this question was generated with ChatGPT.
Nice, yeah.
I would like to see the prompt, but still really good questions.
Yeah. So for so now this example I was talking about earlier, where we'd used Relume for some of the like to speed up the process. The client was mainly just happy that it allowed us to do more things within their budget and to yeah, and they also were they were kind of on the same page of they don't need all of the sections to be unique. So it's okay that some layouts, of course, we change the colors and the fonts, and so it feels like their brand, but they're okay with not reinventing the layouts. And yeah, so I think it's something that most clients will yeah will be able to understand. Of course, it depends also on how it's used and how it's communicated that we're using it and why.
Yeah. And Lisa has questions. Do you reference using AI for work that you publish to users? For instance, design for a website as you created in Relume.
Sorry, do I?
Do you reference using AI for work that you publish to users? I think that's interesting because one thing is like, do you actually tell clients that you have used AI to generate the designs that you're now selling them? But another thing is, do we have an ethical kind of responsibility to inform users on the end? Lisa, let me know if I'm interpreting your question too much, but that's how I perceive this question is like, do we need to tell people that this has also been created using AI?
Yeah, it's a good question, and there are a lot of these dialogues in the moment, especially when it's becoming possible to do more and more detailed things with AI and soon also video. But yeah, so in my opinion, of course, when yeah, so for instance, this wireframe here, I wouldn't necessarily say that that wouldn't necessarily be something that would be meaningful for me to say to end users of the page that it was generated by AI, because it's in a sense it's just a combination of different components that I could also use the Relume tool to manually just to add those. And it's not that it's an AI generated website, but I think it's different when we're talking about the content and the images, for instance, or the videos, and because there we're getting into the communication part, and yeah, in general, I think that we're still in a spot where if you have AI generated text on of like no, there's of course also different levels to it, so depends on how much it's just you asked an AI to write a full blog post for you, then I think it would make sense to say that this post was generated by an AI. But if you're writing a blog post and using an AI to edit it to make it more concise or to make it communicate clearly, then I wouldn't necessarily say that it would be of importance to include that information. But of course, it is something you could do to like have full transparency. And I think maybe the transparency will be more important going into the future, because there will be more suspicion of people, users of, is this content generated by an AI? Because it will be harder to tell the difference.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it really the responsibility at the end is always on the designers or the people creating like the websites or the digital products or whatever it is that we're looking at, and their own ethics. So that's interesting. We have a question as well here. Do you worry about how and which data you share with different AI tools? For instance, when explaining context for user test to ChatGPT, how do you make sure not to share any confidential information while still explaining enough context?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also that is something that makes sense to be a bit aware of, because of course we don't want to give business critical information to the AI model. Just for like a precaution, I guess. And I think in most places when using it to draft an interview guide, then I think it should be possible to get to a level of detail without that you can get something meaningful out of it without including secret or NDA information.
It's again, I actually have a question. This is a personal question for me, which is about like you use ChatGPT, and that's also my preferred one. But then there's all these other types of AI generators coming up, like Gemini from Google and different ones. I think it's also about being critical about who's behind the chat search engine, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like use your own like full 5 cents, right?
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
your, do you use other ones, or have you just like completely sworn to only use ChatGPT?
I'm mostly using ChatGPT, but I think that's also mostly out of habit. But I also just super briefly tried the Google Gemini, and also heard a lot of things about the Claude, which I don't think is in Denmark yet, so still waiting for access to that one. But I think it's also, for me, it's been more a question of, okay, now I'm using this tool and it's doing what I wanted to do in a fine way. Sometimes it's a bit slow, or like you have to help it a bit. So it would have to be that another tool it makes a big enough difference for me to change. Of course, it's super easy to change because basically every time you write a new message, you start from in scratch. So you would use it in the same way. There's no difference in how difficult it is to use, because most of these are like a chat.
I think it could be interesting when I hope that we will see that like ChatGPT and all these platforms become better at actually remembering what you've given it from inputs, so that and then it could be perhaps that we're working on a project and then saying like save all the information that I'm uploading about this project, so I don't have to sit and do it every time, which can be a little bit repetitive and annoying. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's also what not right now. It's a lot of people are doing these custom GPTs where they're then uploading some information and then allowing ChatGPT to use that in their messages.
But regarding confidential information, I think it's very much be aware of what is actually confidential and what is the confidential part of it. A lot of things you can also just put in some dummy text or explain without saying directly what it is. Again, of course, confidential information can be a lot of different things, but be cautious of what you're putting out. I mean, once we put stuff on the internet, it's out of our hands, so to say. Do you fear, Riziki, that someone is sitting and plugging the inputs that you're giving it and I don't know, using it for something?
No, I don't fear that there is a like a third party or like someone with evil intentions on like getting the data, but I know that they are, if you have a toggle to like where you can choose if you wanted to allow it to train or use your history for training or something like that. Also where you have this like, was this a good response or not? So I'm mindful of that they are using this data to improve their models, of course, because that's their business. They want to become better. So if I wouldn't give it some information that I wouldn't want to go into that model, so to say. And
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a good point. No, but it is now 11 o'clock, so feel free to leave. We have another question from Morten that I'll just take on the other side. But thank you so much for coming in. Riziki, can people add you on LinkedIn after this talk?
Yes, you are definitely welcome to do that. And
Amazing.
yeah.
And the recording will be live on Preely's website later on. I also want to just briefly just mention that the next event we'll be doing is on the 23rd of April, and it's going to be with a speaker that I've had been before, um, and her good friend. Julia and Kate, and they'll be talking about how to use user feedback. And when you get this user feedback, it's important that we triangulate it. So we just don't take people are complaining about one thing and then we'll just go and change the entire website, but we make sure that we actually get 3 different inputs that this is actually a problem for users before we start acting on it. And this is going to be the first of 2 events. So the first one is like basically how can we make sure that we're collecting the feedback from the users so that we are taking into account their feedback, and then also when we know when to act on it. And then the next event is going to be how do you actually act on it, so making sure that it can happen. And that is on the 23rd of April from I think it's 3 o'clock in Danish time. But thank you so much for joining in. And Riziki, let's just take the last question from Morten. We talk about Reloom, could we go the opposite way, import a design into Reloom, and would that at all be meaningful?
Not specifically for Reloom. So yeah, for that it's very much from Reloom and out to something like Figma or Webflow. So yeah, the main input in Reloom would be a description of the company and all, or the sitemap. If you already have that, then you could get it to generate that.
Perfect.
Mm.
Stefan is also asking, how do you take your existing sitemap and generate it in Reloom? I mean, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, yes, sure. So what I did in my example was just to write it out as text here. So along with the description of the company, I just wrote and I listed the pages that I wanted, and then it will rate them. Yeah, usually it will get it right. Sometimes it misses some, but then you can add those.
Perfect. Before we finish up, I just have one question. Where do you go personally to stay up to date on what is happening with AI tools and what are the new things? Because I know that that's something you at Credit are really good at as a company, actually staying on top of new trends and all these things. So where do you stay updated? How?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm very much active on YouTube where I watch videos from just I think the YouTube algorithm knows by now that I'm into this topic, so it will suggest whenever there's someone talking about something new. And also on Twitter, there's a lot of things happening in the international like design community. So there you can also connect to some people that are doing some cool things and see it directly.
Perfect. I think that's thank you. Thank you so much, Riziki, for sharing your knowledge with us on this topic. It's a topic that will keep on growing, right? So we will probably never hear the end of it. And I'm sure if we did this event again in a year, it would you would come with some different things. But I definitely thought it was very insightful, and I'll be checking out Reloom. I think that's was really good. Thank you again so much for checking in, and I hope to see you later in April. Stay safe, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.